All right. If you're ready, I will read the rules of the road and we will hand it over to you and get started. Sound good? Let's go.
Let's do it.
All right, well, welcome everyone. If this is your first time joining us for one of our virtual committee meetings, you'll notice that you're muted right now, and everyone's going to stay muted throughout the duration of the meeting, except for our task force co-chairs, Elizabeth and Adam. As we move through the meeting and move through the agenda, they will call on members of the public who wish to speak. You can participate by going to the reactions icon on your screen and on your device and pressing the raise hand button there. It's not the thumbs up or the wave, those will disappear. Only press the raise hand button once. If you press it a second time, your hand will go back down. If you're calling in from the phone, it is *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute whenever you're called on. Be on the lookout for a prompt asking you to confirm unmuting once one of the co-chairs calls on you. If you're having problems, the chat is available for technical support to help with the Zoom software. It is not to ask questions or make comments to the co-chairs. They will never see those chats. If you're using an older version of Zoom, you'll need to go to the participants section where you might find the raise hand feature there. And finally, we encourage you not to raise your actual hand or wave at the screen to get attention. We may not be able to see you. And so if you're having a problem, chat me, I'm here for support, and I'll hand it over to Elizabeth and Adam.
Okay, thank you all for joining. I see we have 21 participants thus far, which is great. And I'm happy for those who are volunteered to join the committee. So we have a short presentation today, and we're going to open it up for some brainstorming, spitballing at the end of the presentation. And we look forward to hearing everyone's ideas about where this could go. And if you have any opening remarks, Elizabeth.
Thank you, Adam. I'm really excited to be co-chairing this task force with you. And this is an outcome or an outgrowth of discussions that took place over the course of multiple months at the zoning committee meetings and at full board meetings, where previously Adam had proposed to the zoning committee that we look at upzoning a group of blocks in the Yorkville area that are currently zoned manufacturing or commercial. And through feedback from other members of the board and a board resolution, that scope was expanded to look at all of Community Board 8 that is currently zoned for either manufacturing or commercial, and recognizing that as a board for multiple years, we have identified affordable housing as one of the single greatest priorities for our community board area. And so we're really excited at this opportunity to focus on these particular blocks and discuss and hopefully develop over time and with a lot of discussion, appropriate proposals for these blocks. So thank you all for being here, and we look forward to the dialogue.
So without further ado, I'd like to share my screen for a short presentation. Yes. Everyone see that okay?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay. So this is the Manhattan Community Board 8 task force on converting outdated zoning districts to residential use. It's a working title for the task force, but we'll go with it for now. So what is the rezoning task force and what are the goals? The task force was created by board chair Russell Squire in response to a board resolution. The task force will address the need for more affordable housing in Manhattan Community Board 8. And the task force will aim to look at out of context C8-4 and M1 districts that are scattered throughout our community district. And one or more of these blocks has an owner initiated rezoning application, which is block 1540. That's an M14 district located on East 94th Street. So this is a map of Community Board 8, starting down here and then up to here, obviously from the park to the river and Roosevelt Island included. There are a few sections of M14 zoning districts that are here. That's block 1540. Then this is block 1587. This is the asphalt green and marine transfer station. Then we have block 1487, which is Con Ed, and block 1484 to 1485, which is an HSS group of properties that HSS has assembled over the years. C8-4 zoning districts are, again, back up in Upper Yorkville here and here, as well as a collection down in the East 60s, east of 3rd Avenue, or east of 2nd Avenue. Next slide. Let's see. So what is permitted in these districts? Well, in the M14, an FAR of 5 is permitted for commercial and manufacturing uses, and up to 6.5 for a limited number of community facility uses. The use groups that apply to this zoning district are 4 through 14, 16, and 17. Within the C8-4 zoning district, it's a 2.0 commercial FAR with 6.5 community facility FAR. Use groups 4 through 14 and 16. Commercial office uses, school uses, which is a rare use also permitted in residential districts. And you can see in the neighborhood ongoing developments of life science, self-storage, the existence of manufacturing uses. There's warehouse buildings, and auto repair, car washes, gasoline service stations are all permitted, as well as parking garages. And hotels used to be permitted, they're no longer permitted without a special permit. What's key is that in these zoning districts, residential uses are not permitted, and there is no stated height cap in M14 or C8-4. So how can we accomplish the goal of more affordable housing? This image to the left is 601 West 29th Street, which I believe is the first MIH development in Manhattan. It's over 900 units with over 200 affordable units. That's why I put that image here. So beginning in 2016, rezonings of non-residential areas for residential development or upzoning of existing residential areas require mandatory inclusionary housing. MIH requires 1 of 4 options for projects greater than 12,500 square feet of residential floor area or more than 10 units. So projects less than 25 units and 25,000 square feet of residential floor area can opt out of MIH by paying into affordable housing funds. So between that 12,500 and 25,000, there are ways to opt out. So in option 1, 25% of the units must be permanently affordable at 60% of AMI, which is average monthly income or median income, with 10% affordable at 40% of AMI. And option 2, 30% of the units are permanently affordable at 80% of AMI. And then options 3 and 4, which are not used as regularly, have a deep affordability option, which is 20% of units that are permanently affordable. And then option 4 is the workforce option, where 30% of the units are permanently affordable at 150% of AMI. So rezonings have happened throughout the city since MIH has been put in place. So there was the East Harlem corridors rezoning in Manhattan, the Inwood rezoning, which happened in 2018, and then there was a court case and that eventually won approval in 2021. Recently, there's the Soho NoHo rezoning, the Gowanus rezoning in Brooklyn. One of the first rezonings under MIH was the East New York rezoning, and there's an Innovation Queens rezoning, and the Jerome Avenue rezoning in the Bronx. Other neighborhood-wide efforts that will likely be rezoned include the Midtown South mixed use, which is currently zoned M16 in the 20s and 30s in Midtown South. And then the M Crown, which is an interesting case study for this action, because the M Crown was essentially a rezoning framework that was passed by Brooklyn Community Board 8, which laid out higher densities and a path for growth. And it was never formally codified into a rezoning for the whole neighborhood, but it set a framework where there were individual property owners going and rezoning parcels. So you would have a 10,000-foot parcel being rezoned and then other parcels being rezoned, and all with the framework of the M Crown that was established, I think, roughly 10 or 11 years ago. So future meeting topics and items for discussion this evening are, we hope to have a presentation by DCP, Department of City Planning, about the process. We'd like to get into what the areas of key concern are for neighborhood stakeholders. What non-residential uses do we want to prioritize? So oftentimes in these rezonings that from existing manufacturing zones, there's an intention to keep the manufacturing uses, or at least a portion of the manufacturing uses, on the ground or second floor of the buildings. What does the ideal density look like? And how do we incorporate block 1540 into our study? So for a little background, 1540 is on East 94th Street, and it's a proposal by Friedland to develop a 480-foot tower under MIH, and they have assembled a zoning lot that is a couple parcels and air rights from a number of other parcels. And they, I believe, will be coming before the community board next month. Will might have the answer for that.
In the fall.
In the fall. And they will present their rezoning application, which I believe has been certified by city planning.
Pre-certified.
They are certified.
Oh, they are now?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay.
So the areas we will look to prioritize are Yorkville, the HSS cluster, and the East 60 clusters. And with that, I'll turn it over to any questions or any ideas about what people think about this effort, and what ideas people have for density and priority.
So you have one member of the public, Elizabeth Weiss, and then Alita and Rita. And I'll just remind everybody that you can participate by going to the reactions icon on your screen and finding the raise hand button and pressing that. So we'll go to Elizabeth first.
Hi, I am looking, I'm on 1540. I'm looking right out my window and I see the property that Friedland purchased. I'm on the board of my building, 226 East 95th Street. I've been a resident here for 20 years. I know that they will be presenting their certified rezoned, whatever it is they're going to present. They did come to us years ago to try to purchase air rights, and they were playing us against our neighbors. They were not transparent. We had to hire counsel because we're just a board. I can tell you that being a board member for 20 years, having a very small building of 29 units, very community oriented, we're 5 stories tall. The way they approached us was very disrespectful. They only laid out things the way that was going to serve them. Okay. Anytime we presented them with questions, we talked to Friedland, we talked to his son. Okay. So where I'm going with this is there's all this development going around. There's all this zoning, rezoning. I don't believe that our building will be protected. I absolutely feel that you guys well, do your due diligence as a community board, but I have absolutely no faith, having had contact with the Friedland family as developers, that they're going to, even if they do incorporate some affordable housing, it hasn't been transparent. Our board members keep coming up to the board and asking what's going on. Do we need to sell? And everything's in the dark. So I'm putting this out there as a board member, resident, community member, looking right out my window, imagining I am going to have that image that was just put on the screen of a 400-foot glass windowed building right out my window. And I know there's all kinds of laws about space. Again, I'm going to be quiet now, but I don't trust this process. And it seems to me that whoever has the most money wins. They have the most power. And what can I do? Let me be constructive here. What can I do, given you what I'm telling you, tax-paying, good community member, citizen, do to prevent being exploited by this giant corporation and protect the air that comes in my window now? My board, they wanted to buy our building. Okay. And I can go on, and I'm not going to tell anybody in this room anything they probably don't know about cutting, the more middle class off at the knees. And, I'm even thinking, what am I doing here? They're going to come in and they're going to build this thing no matter what. It's going to happen. How do we protect ourselves? Where do I go? And I'm going to be communicating with the board. What can we do? We're just working people trying to keep, our quality of life. Do we have any hope?
Well, as it relates to the Friedland application,
Yeah,
it is not a done deal.
I know, but you
It
did
is not,
say
it is still a fully discretionary action that requires approval by the community board in advisory capacity, the council person, the entire city council, and the mayor has to either approve or reject it. So there's and all the other intervening layers of the ULURP process. But there are still many steps that Friedland has to go through to get the rezoning codified and finalized. So there's still ways to speak out if you don't like the proposal, and I'm sure we'll hear a lot from people on your block and in the neighboring blocks about their application.
Elizabeth, I also would like to add that a lot depends on what you mean by feeling protected. I mean, obviously it sounds like your board has chosen not to sell your building, and it sounds like you also chose not to sell air rights.
No, that's not true. They withdrew their proposals every time we conversations with them. They would go on and tell us how it would benefit us. And then we would ask them to follow up, and they never did. And then a year later, they'd say, we want to meet with you again. And they would co-opt the entire conversation. So yeah, we did not do anything because they've never been transparent with us. They only manipulated every conversation we had to benefit them. So we haven't rejected anything. We've tried to be transparent. So that's not correct. And Elizabeth, I don't know if you remember me, but I was on the Community Educational Council years ago, and I know
wow.
So I recognize you.
Wow, thank you for remembering that.
Of course. So anyway, we have been very proactive to talk to them. We have a paper trail of correspondences where they haven't replied. So yes, those things that you mentioned aren't accurate in terms of what we have done. We have not rejected anything.
Okay.
We asked for more information and then were ignored while we pretty much knew they were playing with the other buildings around us, for example, for air rights, who they don't get, they give you a price and then they try to get it cheaper from someone else. So this is, you know, it's a game. So, and then of course they say, don't tell this building, don't tell that building. I've learned a lot through this process. And so just to go back a step, if this rezoning, if we have a lot of opponents in our building, on our block, etc., what kind of meetings should we go to besides this? How can we position ourselves to advocate for our rights? I know that there are all these approvals, but Friedland, you know, has a really interesting way of cutting corners or having backroom conversations with other people, those sort of things. So what do I do as a constituent?
Well,
it's not a done deal. I got it.
It is not a done deal. They will have to present to the Land Use Committee of Community Board 8. They will likely also present to, or they may also present to the Zoning and Development Committee of Community Board 8. And those are meetings that you and your neighbors should plan to attend when this is on the agenda. And, you know, ultimately, the community board will vote on a resolution. It is non-binding. It's, you know, our perspective. And then ultimately city council will have to vote on this and the mayor would ultimately have to approve it. You know, I think there are different types of protection, which is, I was trying to sort of understand what you meant by you don't feel protected. Yeah. Because there is the, you know, what can be built on that site, if that's what you're thinking about in terms of protection. And then there is the, when something is being built, is your building safe to be inhabited while the construction is going on? That's a very different type of protection.
It's all of the above.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever is developed, the community board can be helpful in addressing questions and trying to advocate for work rules and safety issues associated with a development. But that's a long way off.
Yeah. Yes, Alita has her hand raised.
And I double checked with powers that be, and they have not certified yet, Adam.
Oh, they're not certified. Oh, okay.
They're not. So, Alita, go ahead.
Thank you. This is good, this task force. So I'm happy to be at this meeting. For Elizabeth, who just spoke, I would think that Friedland would emphasize the affordable housing part of this because those are important to us and around the city. So it's important to think about that in proportion to the rest of the building, which leads to my questions. Adam or Elizabeth, could you just explain a little bit more about MIH, whether those units have to be built on that site, and whether there's been any research indicating how successful those kinds of rezonings have been with MIH, obviously not here, but, and I know up in East Harlem from Gail Brewer, when she was borough president, that developers made a lot of promises and have not kept them during construction. I don't know whether that applies to affordable housing or just other kinds of neighborhood quality of life amenities that they promised. I don't know, but she said that that was an issue. So I'm wondering what has gone on around the city with respect to MIH and the units that it's brought in, because it seems as though despite all of the construction and the upzonings around the city, that affordable housing is becoming deeper and deeper and deeper as a crisis. And then my last question would be, is it possible in all of this to think about R8B, because these are side streets and neighboring side streets have height limits? Thank you.
I'm actually gonna take your last question first. As we pointed out earlier, there is no height limit under the current zoning, as evidenced by the 150, 160 foot tall self-storage buildings. being
Right,
built
no,
on top streets.
I'm
So-
sorry to interrupt you, Adam. That I understand, but in asking to do something or to rezone the area, if it's possible to have R8B as a goal for these blocks.
I mean, sure, all things can be considered, and we'll take that note. But just note that there is no height limit in M14 or CA4 right now.
I understand that.
And some of your earlier, so I pulled up the slide about MIH. MIH is a commitment, okay? It's a commitment that we will make, that I think this board should make, this committee should make in any rezoning effort. It is the law of New York City. So it is, we would not be departing from anything that is not already law of the city. I can't predict the future, but I can't imagine that MIH is something that will be erased from the city rules. So this will likely be a 25 or 30% affordable rezoning. And Greenland's rezoning will, I believe, be 25% affordable as well. As to the other rezonings around this.
Adam, sorry, can we just go back for a second to that prior slide and let me push you for detail?
This one?
For the projects above 25 units and 25,000 feet,
Mhm.
must that affordable units be on site?
All on site.
Okay,
And in
so
fact, above 12,500 feet, it all has to be on site. But you can opt out between 12,500 and 25,000 through the payment to the Affordable Housing Fund. So
What does, could I just add two more questions? What does that Affordable Housing Fund actually do? Because the city's not doing affordable housing, it relies on private developers. And two, are these units or are they spatial? So if there are 300 units in the building, is it the number of units, in which case they could be studios or one bedrooms, or is it a percentage of the floor space?
I believe it's supposed to represent floor area. But the units, it should be roughly the same. Depending on how the building is developed.
Because the money comes from the larger units. And the way this is written, it says, let's say, I'm just looking at option 2, it says 30% of units permanently affordable. So that would sound like, as if there were 400 units, they could do 130 units of studios or one bedrooms, and the rest could be 2, 3, 4, 5 bedroom apartments.
No, that I don't believe that would be permitted, and frankly, smaller units rent for more per foot. So that's why a lot of these developments, the new rental developments, are largely programmed as studios 1s and 2s, and you don't see a lot of 3 bedrooms and 4 bedrooms in new rental developments, because you get a much higher rent per foot for studios 1s and 2s.
Yeah.
I'll actually add in, Alita, that while I'm sure there's tremendous demand and need for larger apartments that are affordable. When I was at DOE, all of the population projections for the city indicated that the real growth was in smaller households.
Okay. Good. It's good to know. This is a good learning opportunity. I don't want to hog up your time, so I'll stop here. Thank you.
I guess, should we go back to the public?
Yeah, we have Dara Hunt. Dara, look for a prompt on your screen to confirm unmuting. Dara, look for an unmute button. There you go.
I think I'm unmuted. I very much support eliminating zoning impediments to affordable housing. I do have concerns about density. I'm hearing now, I think, that and my concern was largely about mid-block restrictions. Am I hearing that in these districts, there are no limits?
There are currently no stated height limits for these zoning districts. There are effective height limits.
Yes,
The height is controlled by open space ratios. And,
yeah.
And so there are effective height limits, but there's no stated height limit.
Okay. I live on the block that now has this huge, obnoxious storage facility, which is so unnecessary because there's another huge one just 2 blocks away. I would have loved that to be modest height, but substantial residential development with affordable housing. I support that fully. I do have concerns about extreme density, loss of air on our very crowded side streets, particularly in Yorkville, but I think it probably holds in other areas. But I completely support the project and the effort to remove completely obsolete commercial and manufacturing zoning. That my only concern is extreme density.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you want to go to Rita?
I'm a big supporter of what you are attempting to do. The other part of me is scared to death about, well, first of all, affordable housing, the AMI, which is published by the federal government, is only used if the federal government has money in the project. That's number one. What I'm frightened about is that you are doing this work and it will end up to be affordable housing, 40%, and they'll all be studio apartments. Why isn't, we are desperate for affordable housing, and yet we think that 40% or 20% is wonderful. It isn't wonderful. We're not scratching the surface at all. And the one thing is that when you use the AMI, it is of the area, and you use the census, and it's a 10 or 20 block area, and that's where you get your AMI. So that's why people in the area can move into different housing. That's number one. But what are the assurances that you are changing the zoning for manufacturing and commercial, which should be, because we don't need it right here? What are your, that it would not all go to be luxury housing, and are you doing the work of developers? What is your guarantee that you, just because you say 60% affordable housing, that doesn't make it that way. And if a developer doesn't like that, he's going to go to court and say, I can only do 30% of affordable housing. I keep using the affordable housing, or the MIH, on 72nd Street, where a huge building is going up on 72nd, between 2nd and 3rd Avenue. But around the corner, there's going to be a separate entrance, and there'll be four affordable housing. And people say, isn't that wonderful? They're building affordable housing. It's shameful.
Well, that project is not an MIH project. That is a part of the voluntary inclusionary housing program. And they're developing those affordable units in order to increase density on the site. My understanding is it's going to be a condominium development.
And what is the guarantee
and
we do all of this, and the developer who gets a piece of land, what is the constraint that he has to adhere to this?
So I want to jump in with two thoughts, and then Adam perhaps can expand. To your question about how do we know it's not all going to be luxury housing? What MIH requires is a mix of housing. So when you upzone for greater density, or you upzone from manufacturing or commercial to residential, the law requires effectively a mix of housing that somewhere between 70 and 75%, or 70 and 80% of the units can be luxury, which is what effectively funds the 20 to 30% of the units that are affordable, permanently affordable. So it is a mixed, what a rezoning will generate is mixed use housing, so that a portion of it is affordable, the larger portion is market rate, which could be luxury. And effectively the luxury or the market rate units are paying for the affordable units. So it is an increase in density. It is, we should expect that these will not be 100% affordable buildings. We should expect that they will be somewhere between 70 and 80% market rate.
Well, there'll be minimum
But
minimum 25% affordable.
my question is, that's MIH. What else is there other than MIH? How about the federal government? Are they involved? Would they get involved? And it would be more affordable housing. The idea is that I cringe, and the hair on my neck goes up when people talk about affordable housing, and we give so little, and it means so little. And therefore, are we working for developers here? That's all I want to know. I want to know how I'm going to spend my time. I think it's an excellent, this is the only place we're going to get more land.
So the other thing that I want to talk about here, Rita, is part of the reason for doing this as a task force and for looking at groups of these blocks together and taking a lead to try to do something is because if we don't do anything, the developers are all going to be proposing their own ideas on a piecemeal basis. And we are already seeing the 1540 block. The developer has a proposal to upzone that property. And so it's not that we're working for developers, but if we don't do this and do this in a thoughtful way and try to create something that works, as a bit more of a whole, they will do this piecemeal.
Or if they don't, we'll get more 170-foot tall self-storage buildings.
Right.
Thank you.
I think Sharon is next.
Sharon Pope Marshall, look for a prompt on your screen to unmute. Sharon, you're not at your camera, so we don't know if you're there. So maybe we can go to Craig since she's not unmuting. Oh, there she is.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you, Will. I wanted to thank Elizabeth Rose and also Adam Wald for heading up this task force. I think it's very, very vital, and it's fortuitous for me to follow Elizabeth Rose's comments regarding and emphasizing and reiterating that this is an opportunity for us to look at blocks and have a vision for what we want to see on those blocks, and also what we don't want to see, as Adam also pointed out. With that in mind, I would like to have further discussion regarding rezoning to RAB, particularly, obviously, on the side block. And I would be interested in looking at a comparison, perhaps developing, Adam, some type of chart where we might be able to visualize or see a comparison that includes RAB. And this was something that Alita had mentioned earlier, and really more as an aside, and I'd like to elevate that conversation a bit regarding RAB, because that has been so important to the Upper East Side, for many, many years. And lastly, I wanted to also respond to the representative from the co-op, who the first person, I believe, who spoke from the public. And her frustration was just really, really palatable. And I just wanted, I just wanted to tell you that we're figuring this out, and we are so glad that you are on this call with us, because I certainly, if I were in your position, and you mentioned that you had like 26 units in the co-op, if I remember correctly, having something like that, having a development that really doors the community all around is very, very troubling. But you're not alone. And there are a lot of people who are concerned about that. And circling back to the purpose of this meeting, where it really is an attempt to focus, I think, more succinctly on those of those lots that we can rezone, that we can put our mark on. And I would encourage you to attend our community board meetings, as well as zoning and development, and continue obviously participating in this task force meeting. I would want to remind everyone that Friedland, I forgot his first name, was a member of Community Board 8, I think about 10 or 15 years ago.
Will.
Is it Will? Will? Yes. Okay, yeah, thank you. And, it might be that having the community board involved in some way, as we have actually with other buildings in the district, maybe inviting the representatives from Friedland Properties might be helpful. But I will say that the larger issue is the reason why we're here this evening, and that Elizabeth and Adam have both convened this task force meeting, which is to make sure that especially on the M1 lots or the manufacturing lots, that we're able to say, this is what we want to see on those lots. And I'll wrap up, and I thank everybody for their patience. I'll wrap up by emphasizing that I'd like to see RAB in some context and in comparison with other options, because I would think that if it is at all feasible, that we could look at these options in a chart format, and see what might best work out for particular lots. And Elizabeth and Adam, you've been doing a Herculean job of explaining MIH, voluntary inclusionary housing, and the intricacies of zoning, and I thank you for that.
Thank you. Craig?
Thank you, Adam, and thank you, Elizabeth, for volunteering to be chairs of this task force. I think this is going to be a very fruitful discussion that we're going to be having, and I'm looking forward to seeing what we are able to accomplish. So just 2 comments and then a question. First comment, just looking at the uses that are currently allowed in the current zoning, the one thing I want to just highlight is that they do allow for schools. And I just want to make sure that when we are thinking about whatever zoning we agree upon through this task force, that we do keep in mind that we do need to allow for additional schools, ideally, to be able to be constructed to accommodate growth that will, at least in my mind, hopefully occur. I think that's something that is critical, just to make sure that we ensure that we are planning for.
So schools are permitted in residential zoning districts.
Okay. All right. Just want to make sure that we are not precluding ourselves in any way.
Yeah.
Okay. Second point is, I just want to call out the need to have a diverse range of housing options that are available. I am one who thinks that there is enormous potential in smaller units, and I think we need to be thinking creatively to make sure that we are able to have smaller units to be able to accommodate single individuals and couples that don't need a lot of space. But at the same time, we know that this community is contingent on being a community in which you can raise children. And I know a lot of people who may not qualify necessarily for MIH, but are driven out of this community because there's just nothing affordable for them when they do start to raise children here, and are priced out because 2 and 3 bedroom apartments are unmanageably expensive. So I just want to call out that fact. And then I recognize, as Elizabeth was explaining, how MIH works. My naive question is, with MIH, do developers tend to play games where they will have oversized apartments making up the bulk of their buildings, even in larger buildings, and thus the 25% unit requirement becomes a very small figure that is not really adding much to the existing housing stock of affordable housing? And are there ways to ensure that there are unit minimums of some sort, or to encourage a more substantial number of units to prevent developers from just building larger market rate number of units, and thus keeping down the mandatory affordable number of units. Does that make sense?
I think that that's largely discouraged, and I would also point out that MIH is just a framework. There have been some rezonings, I believe Innovation Queens, where the requirements have been very specific, where they sought, I think, close to 40% affordable. And in connection with that, there was a certain style of affordability that they put forth in that rezoning. So the MIH is just a guide, and we can always depart from that and ask for certain levels of affordability, and that there will be some commitment to spread the units throughout the development pro rata.
Okay, thank you.
Is it Boaz? Next.
Can you hear me? No? Yeah, okay, perfect. Very great meetings, Adam and Elizabeth. I support you 100%. A quick question. First of all, my take is that we need as many market rate apartments as possible. I mean, I don't think that using the term affordable. I mean, every person is what exactly is affordable apartment. But my take is that you want to make Upper East Side as affordable as possible, despite the fact it's the most expensive, one of the most expensive neighborhoods in the world. You just need to increase the inventory, have more apartments as much as possible. But anyway, I support you guys. My only question is this. What is your prediction? Let's say everything goes smooth. You guys sit for a year, talk hours of discussion, put a resolution, everyone stamp on it. Can you give me like the prediction of the range? And they build all, wherever I see red in the map, they build the tall buildings. But what's your prediction? Can you give me how many apartments, market rate apartments do you think you will have? Like some kind of a range. What are we talking about? And what is the range of the affordable apartment? Prediction,
Frankly, I don't know that we have any idea, because the number of units is going to be a function of how dense the development is and which of these areas actually do get tackled for a rezoning. So
if you are optimistic, close your eyes. Well, I'm just curious. What's the maximum? Okay, give me the maximum.
I wouldn't want to entrap myself by offering a yes. And I can't imagine Elizabeth would.
But are we talking about 5,000 apartment or 500 apartment? What are we talking about?
Somewhere between the two.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, guys.
I would imagine, but again, we can't say. We can't say.
Boaz, we really appreciate the question, and one of the things that we do intend to look at is, for the other rezonings that have occurred, what were their goals in terms of the total number of apartments? They may have been rezoning a much larger geographic area than we may be talking about, but we would like to get some benchmarks to sort of understand, well, if you rezone 10 blocks, it might be a range of X. If you rezone 2 blocks, it's obviously a much smaller goal. But while you're here, can you give us tell us a little bit about yourself? Do you live in the community? Sort of how did you come to this meeting?
I live in the community. I live in Knickerbocker Plaza. I'm a market rate. So whenever you guys are talking about stuff that are related to market rate apartments, I try to join.
Great. Well, thank you so much for participating.
No problem. Thank you.
So, and also just a follow up to what Elizabeth was saying, Gowanus, I believe the idea was to create 10,000 apartments.
Good number.
2,500 and 3,000 affordable units.
Sound good.
Gowanus is a huge swath of land. And that said, their densities are lower. They're in the 3s, 4s, 5s. Some projects can be built to the 6s, and then they rezoned 4th Avenue to increase the density up to 8, I believe 8.5 in certain portions. So again, that was a whole neighborhood plan, and that tackled a lot of contiguous blocks. We obviously are not doing that because we're looking at C8-4s and M1-4s for rezoning. So there's no collection of blocks to rezone. So. Oh, I wanted to correct it. I have a swap here. I swapped the FAR for M1-4 and C8-4. So the commercial FAR for M1-4 is 2, and the commercial FAR for C8-4 is 5. I'll fix that when I distribute this to the board. So apologies for that confusion.
Shall we go to Michelle Birnbaum?
Thank you very much. So I have a couple of questions and concerns that are related to what Craig mentioned. I was going to bring that issue up as well. If we are successful in zoning these districts residential, other than asking for an R8B, whatever we do, if we're successful in that zoning, does not necessarily lead us to what our supposed goals are being expressed here tonight. For example, if it's zoned residential, we don't have a guarantee that any rental building would be built, say on 94th Street. It would be perfectly legal to build a condominium. And that condominium could mirror some of the condominiums that are going up on the avenues, in that they are very, very low density buildings, in the sense that they can be 350 feet tall, but in fact, they have only 2 apartments or 3 apartments on a floor. And so you're not solving, I mean, it's lovely and we need the tax base, so it's good to have luxury housing, but we're not solving any of the concerns that we have by zoning these areas residential. And I'm also concerned about the legality, like we're talking about, or you had mentioned, well, we can sort of write in what we want by saying we want this many studios or we want this many large, I'm not sure that there's a legal framework to do any of that. And as a matter of fact, I think that's something that the city is grappling with, because as long as it's not city-owned land and it's privately owned land, the developer has the right to evaluate and see what is the most profitable way for his company to proceed. So, and again, if you have less amount, going back to the low density high buildings, if you have, let's say it is a rental, and if it's a low density building, and let's say it's 35 stories high, but in fact, you have 2 apartments on a floor, if that represents the 70% that's affordable, the other 30% can be yielding, I'm not doing the math here, but you get my gist, can be yielding 5 apartments. You know what I mean? So that's of concern to me. So as I say, I'm not sure how I feel about the conversion, that it's necessarily a good thing to zone all commercial residential. I understand the thought, and I understand that we'd be looking for affordable housing, but I'm not sure that there's a legal way to get it. And so I wonder, I'm asking that as a question. I'm concerned that you could be opening up a Pandora's box here. And if Adam or Elizabeth or anybody else who can offer me guidance in terms of the zoning and what's permitted, am I not true? Am I not right? Couldn't this possibly open up a real Pandora's box, especially if we don't get height limits on the side streets? So I'll just rest with those questions. Those are questions, not advocacy for anything. Thanks.
Michelle, I think those are great questions. And I think, there's a lot of questions at this stage that certainly I don't have the answer to, and I'm looking forward to learning along with everybody. But I'm sort of keeping track of all of the questions that are being raised so that hopefully we will have a relatively early meeting with a representative from the Department of City Planning, and they may be able to answer some of these questions for us, and I'm keeping track of them. In the meantime, Adam, can you comment on the ability, on what does MIH mean in the context of, can a developer build a condo building, and what does it mean?
Yes, a developer can build a condo building in MIH. Oftentimes the economics do not support a 25 or 30% affordable project. It is difficult to pencil it. Without 421A, which we still do not have, all this is, is not happening. It's not possible. So this is all with the idea that we're going to get 421A back, and 421A will be used as a catalyst to build MIH development. I don't know if you saw what happened in Gowanus, but the state essentially put forth a pilot program so that developers with sites in Gowanus that's mapped in MIH can develop their projects and create a pilot ground lease program so that they can pay a tax that would be equivalent to what 421A program was, knowing that it has expired and that it will developers have to finish their projects by June 15th, 2026 in order to qualify for 421A, and not everyone can meet that timing. So the state has created this kind of alternate reality in order to qualify for a tax abatement. And again, all those projects in Gowanus, and I could be wrong, but I don't believe any one of them is being developed with a condominium. I believe every single one of any scale is a rental development. I'll have to check that.
Can I just follow up? That may be true, but that's true within that program. But there's nothing that captures the lots on any street that you might convert to residential. There's nothing that's forcing that lot that could be privately purchased and owned. If my understanding is correct, there's nothing that can force that into an MIH program. Is that correct?
Well, if it gets rezoned, that will automatically put it in MIH. There's nothing to dictate.
Assuming that the owner demolishes and builds.
Right.
The owner would have to decide to demolish a building and build something presumably bigger on its site. When they do that, if the lot had been upzoned, they are required to adhere to MIH.
And does that mean that if they, let's say there was a small garage or whatever, can they build on top of that? I know there's a certain percentage where a property would then be called a quote new building, and then there's another category where they can call it a renovation or something else. So if that developer was to add to what already is there, would that exempt him from having to be under the MIH program?
No, my understanding is no, and that Alt 1 projects fall under MIH. A good example we'll see hopefully in the coming years is in Soho, where there's lots of historic districts. So developments there, which will be conversions and expansions, will all have to use the existing or portions of the existing structure when they do
Right.
their developments, and they will almost all be under what's called the Alt-1 permit, which will be a conversion or expansion of that building. And that, there's all MIH in the Soho NoHo rezone.
Okay, thank you.
We go to Lori.
Hi, excuse me. Thank you very much for doing this. This is just really illuminating. I have what I think, and I apologize because I was a little bit late. So you may have explained this before, but when you count the number of units in a building under the MIH, is like a 4-bedroom apartment the same thing as a studio? Or is it about the land, the floor area ratio that it takes up? You know what I'm saying? Well, like if we say 25%, for instance, have to be affordable housing, does that mean that they could have a building that's full of 3 and 4 year old bedroom units that are at market rate, and then have 15 studios? I mean, I'm not calculating how much 25% of that would be, but do you understand what I'm saying? Am I making the
Yes.
question clear? Okay.
Yes, I think generally that is frowned upon, but allow us to go back and either consult with DCP or I have to pull the actual text from the zoning resolution to see how they explain it. And we'll get back to you with a formal answer on that, to that question, because that's been
Okay.
asked, I think, 3 times roughly.
Okay, thank you. And one other question. I know in the housing lottery that the city has, that new buildings come up and they say how much, how many apartments are available, and 2 bedrooms and 3 bedrooms and stuff like that. Would these new buildings be part of that, or is that a totally separate program that has nothing to do with anything?
Yeah, when you have affordable, that's an HPD affordable program. They run through the lotteries. So the New York Connect.
Right. But that's like an existing program, and this would not be involved in that, correct?
Well, I think if it's MIH and we have affordable, the affordable units will likely run through the New York Housing Connect.
So it would
lottery
be. Okay.
program. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Good. Thank you.
Okay, I think that we are through everybody who has spoken once. So there are a couple of people who are asking to speak a second time. Alita.
Thanks. There's a member of the public, Dara Hunt, who has her hand raised as well. Elizabeth, if you want to ask her first, I'll wait.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Alita. Dara? Did you want to speak again? Dara has lowered her hand.
Okay. I had a few points. One is that there has been a lot of publicity. I know Adam and I have talked about this and disagreed over abuses of the 421A system. So I am very skeptical that whatever we create or develop or ask for will be abused or mishandled in some way by developers. And I have no idea, because I'm not as familiar with this as you are, how to make whatever we're asking for airtight so that it does not get abused and we get exactly what we want. I'm just concerned about that, listening to everybody. The other thing is, what about mixed use? I don't know. It seems like there are not a lot of supermarkets up there. There's been a loss of supermarkets around Manhattan, and I don't know what the zoning is for that, or if it's possible to get that, or to get a school in there, or some other needed quality of life improving type of use. And then my last point is, given what Friedland is trying to do, and I don't trust them as far as I could throw them from having heard stories, but that's just me. And well, maybe not just me. and other potential uses or applications for rezonings, if it's possible to request a moratorium on rezoning individual lots of land while we're meeting on this particular issue. That's it. Thank you.
Don't know that we have the power to establish a moratorium.
We can't establish, but we could ask if that's what people wanted to do.
I'll see if there's an avenue to accomplish that. I doubt that there is. As to your question about the supermarkets, I mean, there is an existing program in the city called the Fresh Bonus Program. So they have both tax benefits as well as zoning benefits for developing supermarkets in areas where they are needed. So that could be something we incorporate into this, and I thank you for that idea. That was a good idea. And school, you know, everyone loves schools, so hopefully that would be something that we could work with the SCA on, and develop a school in this neighborhood as well. So I think those are all great suggestions. Rita, but I think
Rita's a
Dara has put her hand back up, so why don't we go to Dara? Dara, did you want to speak?
Barry, you have to hit the unmute button on your screen just like you did before.
Yes, you're right.
Actually, I didn't really want to raise my hand, but I do want to say that I think I want to be positive about this, but this is full of peril. This is not Gowanus. This is still, even though we're talking Yorkville, this is the Upper East Side. Developers, I think the peril that we face in trying to do this right is substantial and has to be considered very carefully. Thank you. And if I raise my hand again, ignore me.
Okay.
My hand is still raised.
All right, so I think we go to Rita. Rita, did you want to speak?
Am I unmuted?
You are, yeah.
Okay. I want to say thank you to Adam and Elizabeth. I hate to be negative. I just hate it. But I live in a former Mitchell Lama building, 577 apartments, of which 100% were affordable. 60% of the building was for senior citizens, people who were 60 years and older. So therefore, 60% of the apartments are studio and one-bedroom apartments. Then when they bought out, I made sure that everybody was able to keep their apartment. There were people who were here who shouldn't have been here. Over the years, they made much more money, but they loved being able to save it. I think that one of the things that you both need to, hopefully you both heard, is that we, meaning the public, has been so duped over the years by developers, and it always looks great on paper and it never comes to fruition. So I know that this takes an extra diligence on your part, but that I think is the most important thing, is to make sure that what they say they're going to give us, they give us. And thank you for what you do. It's very appreciated.
Oh, Elizabeth, I think you're on mute.
My husband just came home, and so the dogs were barking, and he needed to say hello, so I apologize for muting for a moment. Rita, thank you for everything that you have said. And I think, this is why we want to have a focused group and a focused set of meetings working on this issue. And why we don't necessarily want it to just be individual owners proposing whatever it is that they want.
Marco?
But we definitely register the fear.
Okay.
Marco?
Oh, thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, Adam. I think to do this kind of project, you are in the hot chair, especially you, Adam. And I understand you very well, and I respect that because you really, really will be in the hot chair. The issue is, look, let me put it straightforward. I don't want to go around. The developer, they don't provide welfare to nobody. The developers always they look for their benefit. So whatever solution that you want to do it, or whatever solution we're going to do, we had to give something to them and something good, and depends of the developer. So your intention is, for instance, I heard Craig said, oh, we want to put the schools, we kind of, and you say yes. But you know what? I studied 12 developments in our community. And 12 developments in our community, what I can say to you is for every new affordable housing that is built, 9 is demolished. I can prove it to you. I can show it to you, the study. So this is what it is. It means the developer are in the direction of making money. One. Another thing is the developer always, they want to have luxury housing. So therefore the density usually I can prove it to you is between 22 to 54%. So clearly is going for huge apartments and super tall buildings. So if we make an assessment of these blocks that you have, we had to know how many affordable units we have right now. Then we can make a decision that, 20% is okay, or 50% is too many or too much. Because if we have something, why are we gonna give the developers if we're gonna receive less? So we have
Marco, I apologize for interrupting. I have a comment when you're done. I apologize.
It's okay. No, but you can interrupt whatever you want. That's fine. This is a conversation.
Yeah.
The point is, if you don't, usually densities establish the development. There is nothing that I see in the zoning resolution, as long as you put the ratio, the minimum ratio, which is 680 square feet per apartment, then you have the number of dwelling units. And then the developers, they said, okay, that's the 100%. And they are usually going very, very low density, very. Even though that one of the most damaging developers is your client, is Excel.
Hold on. I have never done any assignment for Excel.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry for that.
I have only been opposite them in every matter.
Okay.
That needs to
I'm sorry for that.
You need to pull that back. I've never done any work.
I'm sorry for that.
Ever.
I'm sorry for that. Let me explain you exactly what the Excel is doing right now. He demolished 79 affordable units, and he revealed 0. He doesn't even build luxury housing because he knows very well the market. And the market is, he find it that is better to put a community facility, which is allowed in all zoning districts. So your intentions are great, but the developers, they looking to make more money than you expect. And that is probably Rita is that she's right. She is reluctant to believe. And the other people is also. The best idea, what I recommend to continue is first, we have to make a good assessment how many affordable, because right now, one of the blocks, I mean, when you present about a couple of years ago, this idea, I went personally myself to all the blocks and I make an assessment. I have an assessment somewhere, and that I know that that's the number of affordable housing that we have right now. So unless in this program, they provide some net gain, it makes sense. But if it doesn't provide or is equal, why we have to create some other problems that we have in our community?
Well,
And the only situation, I'm sorry, please comment. I would like to hear comments always.
So Marco, if I could just jump in, Adam, since we are looking at blocks that are currently zoned in a way that does not allow for residential use. I mean, I have not done a building by building look, but in theory, there may not be any residential use on these blocks today.
There are. There's substantial residential use on a few of the blocks. They are there and they were residential and they pre-existed the current zone. But on other blocks, there are 0 residential units. So Marco, if you'd like to help us with our efforts, that would be great to catalog building by building.
Yeah, I do have it. And yeah, I do the other study that basically the only thing is, please do not put in the picture of this development. This is a big radiator building. I believe in sustainability. And you know that these buildings won't be possible to build because of the local law 94 and the local law 2014, which basically 2014-21, which basically is saying that all the buildings has to be electrical. So therefore, I would agree this gonna be a serious problem. Well, I don't want to go in that direction, but we have to see that our community we serve. The only thing is, please, another thing I'm going to ask you, please remove East New York. East New York is a different history in this process. East New York that had, this is the date, or you put the date is New York, we are the dark. It's completely, we cannot compare these two districts. I know very well this community well, by the way. So I know the communities because I work in different communities, so I know what it is. The best idea, look, if we try to combine something reasonable to make sense, especially what you heard, Rita, what you heard about Elizabeth Waste, she's making a good case, and the idea is to maintain something that we can do better in our community. And finally, I'm going to say, believe me or not, a fellow community member approached to have a conversation. They have an idea to develop one project. And it happened that I found that the most reliable district is the C8 district for what he's planning to do. Rather to change the zoning in what his idea is, it can be used. So C8 it makes a lot of sense sometimes. For instance, you didn't put in the program as the C8 that is between 90 and 3rd Avenue, between 93rd or 94. One of these parts is also it's not in what you market over there, but I know that because I review for this for our fellow community member, and for him
these are the zoning districts from the Zola map. I only highlighted the C8-4 and the M14 districts from the Zola map. So
yeah,
you think that there's another C8-4 district?
Yes, it is. But the main issue is you need to, it means, I know that you work very well in this part, and myself, I has been, even this map, I has been developed deeper and in detail, because yes, we need to know our neighborhood before to say anything. We cannot compare it with Elizabeth neighborhood, the Upper West Side. We are different, even though that's more or less the same community and the same social status, and economic and social. But the point is, look, you want to do something, I'm very happy to collaborate. I'm very happy to do something, because the idea is not to destroy anything. And I hate when there are obstructions. And I don't want to be in that direction. I want to see if we can work it out together in something that makes sense for what the community just said. This is what I didn't speak at the beginning. I want to hear what all the people are saying. And many people, they saying, oh, we're going to build affordable houses. Please build it that way. No, it's not going to happen this way, because remember, you know very well, the developers always, they're looking for profits. And I agree with them, by the way. The only thing I disagree when it's too much. That is I disagree. And that is what I fight is sometimes. I think thank you so much. And I hope that we can keep talking about that. Thank you.
Thank you. And Marco, if you could send the details of the additional block you think that we've missed, we would appreciate it.
Seeing no other hands, did we want to kind of set next steps? Or when our next meeting is? Forgot the date.
We're working on a meeting date
Okay,
in October. I don't think that the specific date has been confirmed yet. What we have learned, and we appreciate everybody's flexibility, is that there, at least for the fall, there is not a standing date that is available for this committee. And so the meetings may jump around day of the week in October, November, December, but we do think that we'll be able to get sort of a fixed schedule for starting in January, but we're working with Will on finalizing details of those schedules. So please do. Yes,
I think I think we have them set. It's Wednesday, October 25th and Tuesday, November 14th. If they change, obviously check the CB8 website. But I think you both had agreed that those dates worked for you.
Yeah. So I think what we'd like to do, I guess, between now and then is we can work with Marco if he has some inventory that he did of the buildings. I mean, I did some work on this as well. We can do our best to answer all the questions that were posed. And hopefully we can connect with DCP and the Borough President's office to see if they have any input about this. And hopefully we can report back by the next meeting. If there's anything else you think we should address for the next meeting, Elizabeth, did you have any other items to address, you think, for the next meeting?
No, I think you summarized it very well.
Okay. I thought I saw a hand go up, but I guess that hand has got that.
All right. Well, I think we really appreciate everybody attending this kickoff meeting for this effort. And we heard, I think, a lot of really good questions, a lot of concerns that I think we anticipated, but that are very real and very valid. And we look forward to trying to get answers and trying to get more information for this group about both process and how can we support the kinds of outcomes that we are looking for. All right, Rita did just raise her hand again. Rita?
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Michelle.
Michelle seconded.
Great. Well, everybody, thank you so much.
Thank you.